Hello everybody, in today's video we're going to be giving you an update on the tropics. We currently have two storms that we're watching, one which is off the coast of the southeast, although that one is not expected to become too strong. And then we have Invest 95L, which could potentially become Tropical Storm Danny or even Hurricane Danny, depending on how intense it does end up being. Currently most of the models have this one becoming a tropical storm, so we still have a few days out to go before we actually start to get to the formation of this tropical storm, but we are kind of fairly certain that this will become some sort of tropical storm. How intense it becomes is still the question. Whether this becomes a category 1 hurricane or just a mid or high end tropical storm is still a question, and also where exactly this tracks is still under question. So today is going to be a little bit more of a quicker upload, but we're still going to be covering two of these storms. And again, Invest 95L is the one that's kind of causing the most kind of focusing all our attention on, because that storm out off the southeast coast does not look too strong as of right now. Taking a look at the current National Weather Service page, you can see that we have all of that heat going on out west, where we have a few record high temperatures, especially in the northwest. We have excessive heat warnings for the entire state of Washington, Oregon, much of California, much of Nevada, into much of Idaho, and a little bit of western Montana, so pretty much the entire west. And then also we have some heat advisories into parts of Montana, Idaho, Nevada, California, and also into some parts of the northeast, where we could be dealing with some temperatures getting up into the 90s. We have heat. We have flash flood watches in effect for parts of Missouri, Kansas, Arkansas, Oklahoma, Texas, New Mexico, and New Mexico as well. And that's for potentially, we could see maybe 1 to 3 inches of rainfall, and that's going to be spread out over the next 1 to 2 days. So it's not going to come down all at once. Yesterday we had a high temperature of 122 degrees in Death Valley, California, with a low temperature in Berthoud Pass, Colorado, where they got down to 32 degrees. That was tied with 21 miles west southwest of Big Piney, Wyoming, where they also got to 32 degrees Fahrenheit, and Peter Sinks, Utah, also got down to 32 degrees. So we had a three-way tie for the low temperature yesterday. The highest rainfall report was near Chanute, Kansas, where they got 7.63 inches of rainfall, and there were no snowfall reports as of yesterday. So taking a look at what the 5-day graphical outlook looks like from the National Hurricane Center, you can see the two areas that we're watching. We have Invest 95L, which is down here, and then we have our next system, which is over parts of the just to the north of the Caribbean, and then it's kind of just offshore of the southeast. Again, this one only has a 20% chance of development. We're really not expecting this to become anything too strong. It's mainly just going to be a rainmaker for these areas, and then this longer area further to the south, even though it just has a 30% chance of development, based off what I'm seeing, I think they might up that up near 40 to 60% chance, maybe even into that red 60+% chance, just because most of the models do have this becoming a tropical storm. The track is still uncertain. There is still possibility that this goes to the south of the Caribbean islands, or there is also possibility that this goes well to the north of there. So there is still some inconsistency within the models, and we're going to be talking about that in today's video. If we look at the current satellite imagery of these two storms, they're both highlighted in red. You can see that first one off the coast of the southeast. Nothing too strong right now. We're going to see a front that's going to move by. Right now it's all the way down in Texas and Oklahoma, and that's why we have those flash flood watches. That's going to move to the east, and as it does so, it's going to kind of pick up the storm and weaken it quite substantially, and it will most likely become extra tropical as that happens. So that's why we're not expecting too much development off of this one right here. But the other red circle, which is in the eastern Atlantic, that's the one that we want to pay attention to. Even though we have a little bit of Saharan dust, which is just to its west, that shouldn't break it up too much, considering that we're now expecting more of a northward track, where it's expected to go somewhat like this. So it's missing out on the center of that dry air mass, and it's just kind of going to skim to the north of there. So it still will have some impacts off of that, although it won't be as strong, or we won't have as much impact from that as we would if this this were to take, let's say, a southward track south of the Caribbean. So it still looks fairly good for development in those areas. If you look at the current surface analysis of it, it's currently located at 10.1 degrees north by 32.8 degrees west, maximum winds of 25 knots, which is equivalent to 29 miles per hour, minimum pressure of 1,009 millibars with a radius of circulation around 200 nautical miles. It's located at 637 miles west-southwest of the Cape Verde Islands, and it's about 1,818 miles east-southeast of Barbados. So just to kind of give you an idea of where this is, it's still very far away from the Lesser Antilles and parts of the Caribbean. So it still has over 1,500 miles, even close to 2,000 miles in some spots to go before it actually heads there. It's moving about 200, 300, around 400 miles per day. So it is moving at a decent clip. It's not kind of just stalling out in the Atlantic. It is eventually kind of moving along. It started off just 2 days ago, barely off the coast of Africa, and now it's all the way into the middle of the Atlantic. So it is moving at a fairly fast clip, and it's definitely not just kind of sitting there waiting for something to happen. Looking at the model guidance, you can see that we do have some discrepancy here. We have some of these models taking more of a southward track where this would kind of make landfall near Puerto Rico and the Dominican Republic and just kind of move straight to right to the south of these islands. And then we have the other models which just kind of make it miss these islands to the north. So it might miss Puerto Rico, it might miss the Dominican Republic, and just move kind of straight to the north there and miss out on all of those islands, which is probably the best path just because it wouldn't have any impacts on those areas. It would be mainly a fish storm out to sea, and we wouldn't really have any impact. So let's hope that it does take that northward track. Even though it would be more intense, it would be over just an open body of water, so it wouldn't have any land impacts if that were to be the case. If it were to take a more southerly track and impact the islands, it would probably make landfall as a tropical storm, so nothing crazy or too strong, but still something that you would have to pay attention for. If we look at the GFS ensemble models, you can see they're kind of more in the middle. They're taking a southward track into the Dominican Republic, and then they're making a northward track into the Bahamas, and then eventually into the southeast coast within the span of about 9 or 10 days. So we're gonna have to see whether that'll actually happen. That is, again, probably 8, 9, or 10 days out before that's actually gonna happen, or that is projected to happen. So there's still a lot of room for this to move around and for this to still change. If we look at the model intensity guidance, pretty much all of these models have this going up to tropical storm status, and whether this is a weak or low-end tropical storm, or whether this maybe approaches category 1 status is still to be determined. We'll have a great deal on the track will have a great deal on how intense this actually ends up being. If this again takes more of a southward track, probably not going to be as strong just because it's going through that drier air mass. If it takes a northern track, it might actually be a little bit stronger just because it's not being impeded by really anything except for wind shear, which will be an issue with this. Speaking of wind shear, here's the current map of the wind shear where you see that red and yellow shading. That's where it's neutral or unfavorable for development, and then in the green is where it is favorable for development. So your storm right now is located somewhere in here. So that's where your storm is right now, and it's expected to make a track somewhere within here. So this is kind of your cone of uncertainty. That's your track, and this is kind of the area where we're expecting development. You can see that it is going into an area of high wind shear, although it does have favorable conditions in terms of the sea surface temperatures. We have sea surface temperatures that are going to be around 85 degrees, and we do have some measurable amount of OHC in the water, so that should help out a little bit. But again, if it does move into this area, which it is expected to be, there is kind of a blob of wind shear right over there. If it can make it past there, there is some weakening wind shear just to the north right in here. So if it can make it far enough to the north, if it can make it past the Caribbean islands and move to the north of there, then it does have a fairly good track to just kind of move on through the Bahamas and potentially move even further to the north. So again, wind shear and also that drier air mass will kind of be the two prohibiting factors with this storm. If we look at the dust, the amount of dust in the atmosphere, Saharan dust, you can see that the values are going to be the highest in those green and yellow shades, and you can see that we have some of that coming off the shore of Africa, and then we have another blob which is kind of over the Gulf of Mexico and the southern Caribbean. So we do have some amount of kind of drier air in the atmosphere, although it isn't too high, especially in these purple areas. That's where we have the lowest amount of Saharan dust in the atmosphere, and that's kind of right over the track of the storm, which would be right around here. So it's not it's not really going to get impeded by this drier air and the Saharan dust layer. So that shouldn't be too much of an impact as of right now. If we look at the sea surface temperatures, you can see that in Celsius they're around 28 degrees, which would be around 85 degrees Fahrenheit, 86 degrees Fahrenheit, which is definitely good enough or high enough to support some hurricane development or tropical storm development. Usually, you only need sea surface temperatures around 80 degrees Fahrenheit to actually support a tropical storm or a hurricane. If we look at the ocean heat content, you can see that we have the highest values which are south of the Caribbean. So right within this area is where we have the highest values, but we still do have some measurable amount to the north of the islands or right next to the islands, so that should be something that could help the storm strengthen up a little bit more. If we look at the depth of that 20-degree isotherm, which is around this would be around 80 degrees Fahrenheit, so 79 degrees, 80 degrees, and that's basically measuring how far down this goes in meters. So the kind of the oranges, the reds are indicating that you could upwell some of those warmer waters, which usually will help these storms strengthen. So you can see that we have a really deep 20-degree isotherm all throughout this area right here, where it's down maybe close to 175, 200 meters, and even approaching 225 or 250 meters in a few of these spots. So that is rather even that is one of the good factors if you do want tropical development out of the storm. If we look at the chances that we get tropical storm force winds according to the European Ensemble model, you can see that we're expecting winds to be or we're expecting the chances to be around 30 to 35%. So we have a decent shot within here. I think this will definitely go up. The European Ensemble model is usually much lower than what the actual the rest of the models are showing. So even if most of the models are showing tropical storm force winds, the European Ensemble model might be lagging behind with only a 30 or 35% chance of development. So probably over the next couple of days, this chance will go up a little bit more because most of those other models are expecting this to become a tropical storm. If we look at the maximum wave heights out of this, we're expecting waves to maybe go up near 10 to 15 feet in a few of these areas. Most of them are going to be offshore. It shouldn't be too bad as you get closer to the actual land masses, where the wave heights are only going to be probably 5 to 10 feet, but still, that is an issue, especially if you live closer to the coast. So we could be seeing potentially some dangerous waves, especially just offshore of the Lesser Antilles, where that storm is going to be moving through. And then finally, looking at the total rainfall out of this, we're expecting in inches around 1 to 3 inches over this area right here where the storm does track through. So it's not going to be a huge flooding concern, although most of that rainfall could cause potentially a little bit of isolated flooding in some areas. But again, it's nothing that's going to be too widespread or too impactful from this type of storm. So that is going to wrap it up for today's video. Please consider liking the video, subscribing, and turning on notifications. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.